Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 35. In this episode, I talk with Stacy Ruelle-Dupont. Stacy combines psychology with physiology, which I find really interesting. In this episode, we talk about managing stress during COVID-19 and how you can do that, about her business burning down to the ground, and about the combination of mental health and movement. Now, there are a few spots where the audio goes out just a little bit. Bear with me. Zoom is kind of going crazy right now. That's what we use to record our conversations. And I think because of COVID-19 and all of the rush to use tech now, it's slowing some things down. But that's barely in there. I know that you're going to love this episode and find it so valuable. Stay tuned. Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I'm glad you're here. We are all striving to be confident, bold, and authentic so we can live a life that we're passionate about. Today's guest is Stacy Ruelle-Dupont. Stacy, thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
First off, before we go any further, I have got to ask you, do you consider yourself to be ordinary or badass?
Well, as I thought about that, I thought, I don't know. I think sometimes I'm pretty mundane, pretty boring, and just doing boring things. And then other times I think I am pretty badass and have done some pretty badass things. So I guess I'm both.
What's something badass that you've done?
I don't know. I've decided to move across the country one time on the flip of a coin. Done some skydiving, done climbed some mountains, built some businesses, had some kids. That was really something badass. I think there's been a lot of things that when you're doing them in the journey of it, it doesn't always feel like it's really badass. But when you look back or when somebody asks you a question about it and you're like, yeah, I've done that. And it's like, wow, yeah, that is kind of badass.
Isn't that funny how it makes sense like looking back, but it doesn't always make sense in the moment?
Right. In the moment, it was just like, oh, that's just what I was doing.
So you said you moved across country. You moved from where to where?
I moved from northern Wisconsin, where I grew up, to southern Texas, where I decided to go to college.
How was that experience?
There were parts of it that were fantastic and parts of it that weren't. Overall, it was wonderful. I'm still very connected to that area. My husband's from there and his family is all there. And we go back all the time. And when I moving from northern Wisconsin, where I grew up about 3 hours from Canada, and he grew up 2 hours from Mexico, almost straight down across the United States, down I-35. And so moving from northern Wisconsin, which has a really different culture than southern Texas does, especially in his small town, which is 80% Hispanic, was really difficult. I didn't understand things like why the houses were painted a very pastel-y color. That was so strange. And yet now living in coastal regions, anyone who's listening who's lived in a coastal region knows it's pretty normal. But at the time, it was so strange for me because where I grew up is much more woods and darker colors and greens and maroons and blues from the Great Lakes. So in these big old growth forests, that it was just really different culture. The collectivism down there was really different than the individualism that I was used to in the northern state. So lots was different.
So did you move down there with your husband?
No, I was 18. I had been going to school in Wisconsin. So I graduated high school, was going to college in Wisconsin, couldn't really figure my stuff out. Had a really great plan until I started having some health issues. So I was going to be a psychiatrist. I knew this from the time I was in the 8th grade. And then had some of my own health issues start when I was in high school. And as a result, got pretty disillusioned with Western medicine, and decided I did not want to go to med school, which then left me with no other plan. Learned then that I should always have another plan. So had no other plan, didn't really know what I wanted to do, ended up bouncing around to different schools and different majors, and ended up deciding I was going to move away to try to figure things out and try something new. And so, yeah, I just decided to move to Texas one day.
I love that.
I called my parents up and said, "Hey, I'm moving to Texas." And they were like, "Oh, okay." So I was 18, and I had then done some research. This is before the internet was widely available, so did some research on where to go and what to do and that kind of thing. And so we packed up my little car, and my parents, my brother, sister, and I drove me across the country to start school in August. And so I moved down there to go to college and ended up staying 6.5 years. Met my husband down there. He's from down there. And
I love that. And like also just like the feeling of adventure and trying something new. That's always terrifying, but thrilling.
Right. Yeah. Like I was like, I'm doing this. And then I was like, oh shit, I'm doing this. Oh God.
Yeah.
And there, I learned then too at 18 that there were people who would always support it and people who would always naysay it, and how to listen to those who were supportive, and how to not ignore the people who were concerned, but like, how much do I really need to pay attention to you right now?
Right.
And
right.
yeah, so that was a good lesson as well, and all of that, because it really did become like, oh my God, I'm really doing this. Like, this is nuts. What am I doing? And it worked out.
Yeah. You had mentioned I should always have another plan. Can you explain that?
Mm-hmm. So I can be a pretty driven and very focused person, almost sometimes overly focused. And so when I get into what I want to do and where I'm headed and what I'm focused on, I can be a little bit one track. And when that was a good experience to say, this isn't going to work out for me. Everything, I decided on a career day in 8th grade that I was going to be a psychiatrist. I had it planned out. I knew where I was going. I knew how long it was going to take me. And then when I decided that wasn't really where I wanted to be, I didn't like the reactive medical community that I had been involved with. And I felt like it really wasn't helping me be well. And I thought, that's not what I want to do. I want to do something more around wellness and helping people be well. But I've always been curious about why people do what they do. And so there was this other element of wanting to be engaged with people in a more proactive way. So at that point, there was this just, what am I doing? And all this confusion, because I hadn't thought about not doing my original plan. And stepping back now, I mean, at the time it felt really overwhelming not to have a plan. It felt really like a failure. And looking back now, it made perfect sense. And so, at that point, it was like, yeah, I need to always have I need to have some awareness that there's multiple roads to the same place. There's multiple things I could be doing. And that each decision you make kills off the choice of the other decisions in that moment, but it doesn't mean I can't go back to them.
Right. So do you incorporate that in your life today, like having another plan just in case?
Yes. So my husband and my kids would laugh and tell you, yes, I always have like an A, B, C, D, E, and F. Partly because I'm creative and I like to come up with ideas, but partly because it's like, well, if this doesn't work, then we can always do this, and then we can do that. Sometimes it's a detriment because I really don't need to spend that energy coming up with different plans. And for the most part, it's been really good and great that we have other options.
So I really enjoyed hearing a little bit about your adventure and how you moved across country, but tell us a little bit more about you and what you do.
So I am currently a clinical psychologist who also has a PhD in somatic psychology. Um, so I work in a private practice. I incorporate physical exercise because in all of that stuff, so it's funny how like the one path didn't work out, but it ended up coming full circle eventually. So in the beginning, I thought I was going to go to med school and be a psychiatrist and work with people in mental health because from a really young age, I was very curious about why people do what they do. And I really wanted to figure that out and understand that. And so I knew I was always interested in that. And when the psychiatry thing fell apart, I decided that I would be, I ended up, actually, I didn't decide. I like tried out a bunch of things and ended up landing in the world of kinesiology and exercise science and health and fitness management and the business of wellness. And so I ended up getting a degree. My undergraduate degree is in kinesiology, which is the study of human movement. And so I really enjoyed that and was very into that. And fitness and wellness were where I was able to be really proactive. But my clients kept crying. I worked in this big athletic center. I worked some corporate fitness. I had some private contracts for some different consulting pieces early on, and people would cry. And in fact, it got to the point where some of my colleagues on the fitness center floor were like, "Hey, your client's on the treadmill again crying." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Because whenever they would cry, they would make progress.
Right, right.
I realized I needed a little more skill. There was something in me that was drawing out something in them. I seemed to be the one who had the assessments that the intake paperwork said things like, I don't want to be depressed anymore, or I'm tired of drinking too much, or I know my husband's cheating on me or something. So I always ended up with these clients and I would ask my colleagues like, "Hey, does this happen to you?" And they're like, "Yeah, sometimes, but not really." And it seemed to be overwhelming for me. So I decided I needed more skills, returned to school to get a counseling degree. The goal was always to put the counseling into the fitness world. Um, and I eventually ended up owning a health club that dramatically burned down one day. So then that idea of being able to use my mental health degree in service of my fitness career wasn't I wasn't available to me in the same way. So I ended up working in community mental health and really liked it. Like had no idea I would like it as much as I did. If you would have asked me in the beginning of my master's degree, here's another divergence from the plan, what I'm doing with it. And even I can remember a professor saying, "Well, how are you going to work with serious and persistently mentally ill people?" And I just flat out said, I'm not doing this to have this as my career. I already have a career. I'm getting this degree to help the career I currently have. And then that career was somewhat gone in a moment, about 5 hours worth of major fire. So I ended up working in community mental health, really liked it, ended up staying in community mental health about 10 years and learned a ton, was able to work in integrated care with families, with children, with adults. Because I work in rural America and have my practice is in a very small town, we don't get the option of picking, like, this is what my specialty is, or this is where I'm at. I have some expertise in some different areas, but was exposed to working with pretty much anything that walked through the door. Um, as a result of that, had a number of years of different supervisory roles and was able to gather a lot of experience, including at that community mental health center. They were very open to me bringing in the exercise and fitness world that I was used to. So instead of taking my mental health career or my fitness career and then adding the mental health, I ended up with a mental health career and added the fitness in. So I was able to do a major research project, which was my dissertation research, and then was able to also do a number of pilot studies and test programs, and really work to see how best to add mental health and exercise and wellness together along the way. So I've been a certified personal trainer for 20, 25 years, and then a group exercise instructor. I was that for like 20 years. And now I'm also a certified nutrition coach in addition to my psychology stuff. So I really was able to meld a lot of that together and blend these two worlds in a very practical, on the ground environment. And as a result of that, ended up leaving community mental health to go into private practice because it was time for me to take that stuff to the next level and really figure out how to incorporate more of an environment like that, which now in my private practice is thriving to the point of needing to add some therapists. So I'm currently building out a studio, which is kind of a make yourself into whatever you want creative studio of blending health and fitness and holistic wellness all together, so that we have a private personal training studio, we have traditional mental health, but in that we can incorporate a lot of crossover. So we'll run group exercise classes for depression, anxiety, trauma, addiction, which is the next step in my own expansion of the career that I have created, as well as we will have the behavioral health people supporting weight loss, weight gain, and like sports performance and enhancement and things like that, that we know is there's a huge mental component in whether or not you can reach those goals. So we're going to have all of that in one place, along with nutrition coaching, and being able to really meet the whole person so that they can create their best self and become whoever it is they want to become, regardless of what they're dealing with in the moment.
I love how you just took kind of one step at a time and just kept doing the next thing until you figured out what it was that felt right to you. I think that oftentimes we just give up.
Right.
So speaking of giving up, can you take us back to that moment where your health club burned down, where that was all your dreams and you're watching that club burn down, and kind of what went through your head and how you got over that?
Yeah, at the moment it was just true disbelief. So it was a Saturday, and I had actually been there earlier in the day to drop off some materials for an upcoming racquetball tournament we were going to have. I'd been there, I'd gone home, and then I got a phone call from one of the employees that, hey, you've got to come back. We have a fire and it's serious. And I pulled into the parking lot just in time. We had a glass front atrium to see that explode out with flames. So this was serious. This was a big deal. Luckily, the people that were in the club all got out safely. The staff did an amazing job of doing exactly what they were trained to do to make sure that everybody was safe and that things were as secure as they could make them as we transitioned outside. In December, it was about 4 degrees outside. It was so cold. And for the next, all afternoon, that was maybe in 11 o'clock noon, for the rest of the afternoon, we just watched the building burn. I was talking, when I saw him pulled in, talked to the fire chief, and he said, we're going to do our best and we may not be able to stop this. And so they did their best. It was amazing. Some of their plans did not work out as they had planned as the fire grew and intensified. But it went from, this was my dream job. I was back in my hometown. I was building an audience before social media was really available. I was a local personality who was on the news and building this way of being in the world. We'd started a group to get the city initiative, to get the city to be more active. I was sitting on committees and helping craft wellness plans for the county. And in 5 hours, it was all gone. It went from me being one of the top 10 under 40 to watch in the region to not having a business. It was really, really hard. And then
Terrifying.
We went through, it was just, I woke up the next day just completely in a fog. So we, and then we were still under investigation. I mean, we were under investigation for a long time. And I want to say there were 3 or 4 months of investigation. And then there were another 3 or 4 or 5 months of insurance stuff that we had to do and go through. It was really, really hard. We went from having this great community of people who some of them had been together for 25 years.
Oh,
Two of my employees had worked there for 25 years. Many of the members, we had a number of members who'd been there for 25 years and saw each other 3 times a week. So we went from having this community to suddenly not having any of that. And so that was really, really difficult. And then trying to figure out now, what am I going to do? So, yeah.
So how did you pick yourself up after that?
Well, I did some therapy.
Always good.
Yep. I love therapy. Did some therapy, looked at what do I really want to rebuild? What would that really look like? What's best for our family. So at the time of this business, I also had 3 little kids. So, there was a lot of stress on our family as I was running this business and my husband had his full-time job and we had 3 small children. Um, so we were really evaluating what is it that we want to do? How can we best do that in the world? And what's best for our family? And about that time, he actually got a call from his former boss to return back to Colorado for a job. And so that also, we had to go to therapy for that too, to determine if we should really move again. And so part of it was just, again, the one step at a time, like, what do I need to focus on right now? And part of it was starting to craft an idea of what could become and where could I go from here. And so we ended up moving back to Colorado. I ended up doing more work online, so I was doing fitness coaching and health coaching that I had started, and we had started through the fitness center back before YouTube was really easy, or, like some of the things I look back and think that I did as I built websites and was emailing people how to do a squat appropriately with good form because I didn't have a good way to do video.
Right.
It was pretty wild to think that we did some of those things back then. Along the way, then I ended up working in community mental health too, and really enjoyed that. So I stayed with that, and like I talked about earlier, my career took a turn in that direction. But it was really hard. I mean, we had to really rely on ourselves and on our friends and our family. I have a huge family, so I have a great support network, and we happen to be living in the town with most of them. So that was really helpful. It was really a time of recognizing what we wanted to do and how we could shift and pivot and focus ourselves again.
When you look back, what do you think was the key to you getting past that or overcoming that?
I don't know. Definitely support. We had lots of support. We were very active in our community at the time. And we had a lot of support from the community, both my husband and I. And like I said, I had a large family network too to rely on. So that was a huge deal. We went to therapy. I believe everyone deserves therapy. When else can you get to talk about yourself for an hour with somebody trained to actively listen to you fully and no bias? So I think that was a huge piece of it. And I think too, that belief that, well, you're just going to figure it out. Like, I don't know what we're going to do today, but we're going to figure it out.
I love that. So when it comes to therapy, a lot of us, I know I used to, like, now I'm a huge fan of therapy, but I used to be like, oh, that, like, I'm not crazy or that's awkward, but I agree with what you're saying. Like, it's more of being able to talk somebody, kind of do a mind dump and get stuff out. But how do you get past that block of thinking that it's for crazy people or thinking that it's not for you?
I deal with that a lot. So in my work in mental health, I've had clients who are court ordered. So some of those folks, some of them willingly come, but a lot of them come like, I have to be here and I don't really need this. But sometimes it's really just exposure. So one of the things that I found as I transitioned from community mental health into private practice, where I have a treadmill in my office, I had a little fitness center area, but people weren't able to do that. And this is true in the fitness world too. So those of you who may run fitness centers, this. People have to be able to see themselves in that environment. And when we don't think we can be in that environment, what we need is exposure. And so there were times in the fitness center where I'd stand in that glass atrium and I'd wave at people in their car and say, you have an appointment with me right now. Why are you still in your car? Sometimes I'd walk out and get them or meet them, because it was about meeting with people and bringing them into the environment so they felt like they belonged. The same thing happens in therapy, where there's this element of allowing people to be exposed to what it is and what it isn't. So it is not a lot of people come to me and say, I can't bear all of this. I can't handle thinking about this. It is not a place where you have to come in and tell every deepest, darkest, dirtiest secret of your life. Sometimes that's helpful and it's welcome.
Yeah.
But for many people, that's not where we go. There's traumas that we have that are pre-verbal. And so you can't even talk about them. There is no language laid down in your memory for those things. They have to come through sensation. So there has to be a different way to explore them. So it's not necessarily about just going back and rehashing and getting stuck in the mud. One of the things with our center, we're really big on switching gears and creating toolboxes and being somewhat directive at times around the therapy of, yeah, it's not just a place to come and vent or to have a friend. Like, we're here to get some work done, creating something, anything, whether it's a piece of art, a poem, a project in your house you're trying to fix or do. Whenever you're creating something, there is work involved. There is a place where you have to get in there and get somewhat messy and dirty with it, where it isn't going to work out so great, and be willing to be in all of that. So a lot of helping people see that therapy can be something very different for them and that can really help them grow and be their best self is exposing them to what's available to them. When we, like I said, I had the treadmill in my office and they're like, yeah, I come to you because you do this exercise psychology blend thing and I really like your website.
Uh-huh.
And then I'd say, well, would you like to walk today? Would you like to use the treadmill to learn about your heart rate and how that actually impacts your sense of anxiety today? And they'd be like, no, no, I don't want to do that right now. And so it was really exposing people and helping them see themselves in those environments, whether it be doing some movement, whether it be the ones who came in and were like, I'm ready to do movement, but they weren't ready to talk about why they were really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
So like helping them see, like, let's slow down and be mindful here. Let's use the movement to really deepen into the trauma that's underlying why you're struggling in your relationship, or why you keep losing your job, or why you have another DWI. Like what's really in there that's the problem. These are all just symptoms of what's not working. And so, yeah, exposure,
Right.
talk about it.
So,
yeah, sometimes it's slow.
yeah. A lot of times it seems like it's slower than we want it to be,
Right. Yes.
Can,
Yes.
can you talk about how movement correlates with mental health?
Yes. That's one of my favorite subjects. So, along the way, I thought for a long time that I would just end up getting a PhD because I had already been on the track of 15 years of post higher education school, and I never quite found the right PhD program for me. I looked at a lot of different programs, and nothing seemed to fit right until I found the somatic psychology realm, which is a really it's not a well-known umbrella of psychology. Psychology has a lot of different umbrellas, and the somatic world is a pretty small community. Basically, what we're saying is the body holds the information for us. The body is a living vessel that has the information. Everything comes through the body. So every thought you have, every emotion you have, creates a chemical, electrical, vibrational pattern or change in the body, which changes your cellular structure. So it is movement at its very basic level. When we take in information, our body is our antenna. That information comes in through the body through physical sensations first. We then label it. We make some judgments about it based on the past, what we've learned, and then we categorize it and we act accordingly. Well, when we can slow that process down, we often are able to find a place where, oh, I wish I would have done this kind of a movement, which might be a push rather than a pull. So when I'm looking at using movement in the psychology room, I really come back to my exercise science training, where we're really looking at what are the different movements of the body, what are the planes of the movements of the body, what do the muscle groups do, where are we getting stuck? So those of us who train, you're watching a client move and that right there is a problem. That's going to create an injury because they're overusing an area that maybe they're compensating with rather than that's where the movement should come from. And then we have to back up and find what they're compensating for. And so when we're doing corrective exercise, we're often looking for those places things get stuck. And I do the same thing in psychology. when they're talking about something, suddenly they're not breathing, or you can see in a person where they're moving and something just doesn't quite move all the way. They don't get the flexion that they really need in that particular movement pattern. So then we back up and we look at how they're experiencing this particular narrative or story of themselves in their body. And then we can program around that. So sometimes the movement in the body looks like what you would see on the fitness center floor, and we're just exploring because we're treating something where they need to feel strong or capable. They need to feel their speed. Sometimes it really looks like we're not moving at all. Like sometimes I've told my colleagues, if you happen to walk by my window and it looks like I'm laying in my recliner asleep, I'm not. We're doing mindfulness-based movement. And so the mindfulness-based movement can be so powerful because as you slow down and recognize where this sensation is, without trying to figure it out, without trying to fix it, we move to cognitive work later, without trying to make any sense of it, we just watch what wants to unfold. And that takes tracking at a really fine level. So sometimes the movement is in service of getting to that place of being able to be mindful. Sometimes the mindfulness and tracking of that physical sensation, the tightness that we feel in a muscle, or the lack of breath, or the pull that we feel, those tracking pieces give a lot of information about what we're experiencing. And then we can look at later how we actually make meaning of that and what we think about that. And so we call it a bottom-up processing versus a top-down processing. Mind lives in every cell of your body. If I want to know if you're depressed, I'll take your blood and look at your serotonin levels. If I want to know if you're stressed, I'll look at your cortisol levels. I often say if I'm really brave, I'll look at your fecal matter, because that's where we see what the microbiome has, where most of our neurotransmitters get made. And so the body is our vessel of our experience.
I have struggled at times because I went to therapy and with being in touch with certain things in my body, like when I have that tightness in my chest, or when I stop breathing, or don't care for myself in the way that I should, like maybe I just don't notice the things in my body or what my body's actually telling me about how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get more in touch with our bodies?
We like them. Many of us feel like we're little heads on the top of something else, but we can't quite figure out what it is. Many in our culture of the United States of America are very disconnected from our bodies. For whatever reason, we don't feel comfortable in our bodies. It's one of the reasons we're the most medicated, the most addicted, the most numb. You know, we do things like shop and watch TV and do things so that we don't have to feel.
Right.
We are so disconnected from our experience. And then we want to think about things and kind of figure it out. And that's great. There's great benefits to doing traditional talk therapy as well. And I do my fair share of that too. But I will tell you it's slower, because by the time we go down multiple roads of what you think it might be, the answer was always within you.
I love that.
Yeah, people just are scared. And and sometimes we've had some major trauma or some sort of tragedy that the body has been a part of. And as a result, that trauma makes us feel very outside of our body. Trauma happens to the body. It's a disruption in our nervous system. And as a result, we feel very disconnected from. And so to come back into the body may feel really unsafe. Many of us were also just taught that I think, therefore I am. So because of a number of cultural things and teachings over multiple centuries, we have been a bit tricked into thinking that the body is a lesser vessel than the mind. But remember, mind is in every cell of the body. The brain just facilitates it all. So as people say, well, I just want to think about that, they're missing a big piece of their experience. Again, exposure is a huge way to bring them back into the body. Sometimes we go very slow, and it's just really touching in, touching out of different sensations, like where do you feel that? And then we talk about it for the next 15 minutes. Other times it's truly like sometimes just breathing. When people say, I don't want to do that breathing exercise. Well, if I put them in particular postures, you have to do that breathing exercise. And now they have an experience of it. We know that experience changes the brain. That's neuroplasticity. So we know that every experience you have changes your brain. Many times we can have an experience and then trust that something's okay to do, rather than if I think about it and then no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to be too stiff or out of my body or uncomfortable or whatever. So sometimes just getting people to have the experience and expose them to the experience of being in their body is all it takes.
So, and I don't know if this is going to be hard to describe, but like, what's a posture that you can open up your breathing with?
Child's pose in yoga. So just if you were to get into child's pose, especially if you get into the modified child where your knees are right under your chest, so you're kind of in a little ball on the floor, that will automatically make you breathe into your back. And so that automatically wakes up the diaphragm. It wakes up the muscles through the back of the spine and through the rib cage. It will help move that diaphragm down in the back and give the kidneys a little massage. So now the body has a little bit of help doing some elimination of toxins and other things. So just that simple posture can help people immensely.
And that seems like that would be helpful even just when you're feeling stressed. Like if you just need to take deep breaths and kind of breathe and relax, is that good for that?
Yes. Yes. So one of the big reasons why we always say breathe, and people go, why do I have to do this breathing thing? For two reasons. One, because when you take a very deep breath, a big diaphragmatic breath where the diaphragm does its full movement, it's a muscle too. So when it does its full movement, it sends out a signal that I'm safe. And when that signal goes out, we have a cascade of chemicals that dump into the system known as the relaxation response, so that we're able then to feel safe in the world. Again, have an experience of feeling safe. Now, when we breathe, it's connected to our heart rate through what's called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. So when I take a deep breath and I slow my breathing down, I will also slow my heart rate down. When I slow my heart rate down, my heart is connected to my vagal nerve system. And so through the polyvagal theory, we know that we have these branches of the vagal nerve. And those branches, part of what they do is they're always monitoring our environment. Am I safe? Am I not safe? Am I okay? Am I not okay? Is this a good person for me to be with or not? We share that system with all other animals. And so when we take a deep breath, we slow the heart rate. The heart rate is part of what turns on and off this system. So when I breathe out and exhale, I'm turning on the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, the stay and play, the I'm okay, I'm safe here, part of the nervous system. When I take an inhale, I'm turning on the sympathetic part, that part that when it's in a fear state is the fight and flight part of the nervous system that we hear a lot about. But it's also the part that says, oh, what's going to happen? Like, this is exciting. There's something here that I should pay attention to. It's the part that is a little bit up for us. It allows us to feel a little engaged and to take notice of. And so we're constantly turning on and off these two systems. The breath is the easiest way for us to manipulate that. And then to allow us to be in the state that's much more helpful for us, which is the parasympathetic. Because in the parasympathetic, I can learn better. I can engage in social relationships better. I can remember things better. So when people come in, they're like, I can't remember anything. And they're in a sympathetic state all the time. No wonder you're stressed. You're too stressed. So we need to help you rest a bit before you're really going to be able to be present to start remembering more. And as people are learning how to be more in that restful state, what we also know is that people with mental health diagnoses often have more health problems in general than people who do not have a mental health diagnosis. They die younger on average, and they utilize about 25% more of our health care with 5 unrelated symptoms, which look like things like digestive stress or breathing problems or headaches. And so there are these random symptoms that many of us have experienced, sometimes together, and they go seeking healthcare to fix these physical problems. But part of what we know is that it's the nervous system that's overwhelmed, and that the inflammation rates in the body are too high because we're too stressed, and it's chronic at this point. And as a result, their physical body is now starting to have dis-ease or disease states, and it's not able to cope well with what's happening around. So we see increased joint pain, we see increased pain syndromes of all types, we see increased heart problems, we see increased concentration problems, because inflammation that's chronic in the system goes after and attacks all of that stuff. And this is another place that movement is very helpful. And some of the research that I did in my dissertation work was around this, because stress hits what's called the HPA axis in the endocrine system, the hypothalamus, the pituitary and adrenal axis, which is where our stress hormones come from. As a result of it being in a chronic elevated state, we don't metabolize out some of those chemicals. But when we exercise and we overload the body, we also hit that state, because it's a stress state too. So
Right.
lifting weights, running a trail, running stairs is a stress state. So when we do that, we metabolize out the cortisol, the adrenaline, all those stress hormones that are part of being in that elevated system. And we also turn on some of our other natural states, like our own endocannabinoid system, so your body's own pot, your endorphin system, your body's own morphine. We turn on these other things that are more inhibitive to that stressful state, and it allows us to relax. And that's why we feel so good after some physical work.
So currently there's a lot of people in stress, and we have the coronavirus, which is kind of everybody trying to adjust. But then I think people
Right.
are finding it hard to rest and relax. Do you have any tips for that? I mean, obviously physical, like exercise, like you said,
Yes.
but anything else?
Yes. So that is true. Like a lot of people, and you'll see a lot of posts, some of mine included, like, get your workout in. I know you're at home. Here in Colorado, we're on a shelter in place order, and you get your workout in anyway. It's really important to get some movement in every day. I don't care if you run up and down your stairs. I don't care if you do some push-ups against your counter, do some squats before you go to the bathroom every time you go in there. It doesn't matter. Get some movement in. If you have the opportunity to get out in nature, that's really important. So I know some people live in apartment buildings and things where they really can't get outside, but open a window, get some fresh air. Nature is really important at helping us regulate our nervous systems. So there's a lot of research on how that happens, and getting outside, just even a walk around the block, getting some fresh air, just smelling that oxygen that's in the air from outside is really important for our nervous systems. So getting movement in, eating well. So many people, when they're stressed, turn to foods that actually increase their inflammation rates. So making sure you're eating lots of things that are healthy for you, and everybody has their own bio individuality. So different diets will look different to different people. But in general, we know that people do better when they eat really good fats, when they eat lots of vegetables, when they're helping themselves have some good fruits, when they're getting good meat sources and good protein sources, and they're drinking plenty of good water. So making sure that you are eating a well-balanced diet, and that it includes things that allow your body to have the vitamins and nutrients it needs to make things like serotonin, which is that's the neurotransmitter that says, oh, I'm content, I'm okay here. That's linked to depression. So the more you can give your body what it needs to make the neurotransmitters that you need, the better off you're going to feel. You'll have better concentration. You'll have more what we call capacity to when you're irritated. So even when things are stressful and you're tired of all your family members being in your space, you won't lash out quite as quickly because you're going to feel better in general. So moving, getting outside, and making sure that you eat well. And then, of course, making sure you take time to breathe. And that could be quick 30-second, about 5 deep breaths every so often. It could be a true more form of meditation. So those things alone will do wonders for us as we're dealing with this global pandemic.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think that that's so helpful. And I know, even, like you said, just 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk can be a game changer.
Huge. Yes.
So
big time.
let's pivot a little bit and talk about badass advice. What was your
Okay.
turning point for accomplishing your goals and becoming a badass?
I don't know. I just feel like, um, I feel like there's always been a part of me that's just like, oh, that's what I'm gonna do. Um, my kindergarten teacher, who I was blessed to know, and um, long into my childhood, she told me one time when I was older, she said, when you were in kindergarten, I said, Stacy, are you gonna be able to focus and concentrate tomorrow and not be so talkative? And she said, I just looked at her and said, well, I don't know. I'm only 5. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I feel like I guess I've just always kind of been that way. I've always, I've had a supportive family, like I talked about, and as a result, there's always been a lot of like, again, you just have to figure it out. It doesn't have to be this really big thing. Confidence is the belief that you can figure it out. And so when you step back and look, there's actually probably many, many times that people have been able to figure things out. They just don't always apply it to what's happening right now in the moment. So I think I just learned that really early by watching my family and friends and community and doing it. I
Yes.
think failing makes confidence happen. So when people say I can't fail, what they're really doing is cutting off their ability for actually building the confidence that they can figure it out.
Yeah, that's when you grow.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
do you have a morning or an evening routine that you can share with us?
I do. My morning routine is more solid than my evening one, but my morning one consists most of the time of I get up and I do some sort of movement. So if usually it's about 30 minutes of a workout. If it's not a structured workout, then I am doing more of just a movement rhythmic stretch. So that's about 20 minutes long. And really just to get me and my body on those rest days and to wake things up and to make sure that I have enough flexibility and range of motion where I want it. Following that, then I usually sit down and do about 20 minutes of a combination of a meditation, which is usually 10 to 15 minutes of more traditional meditation, followed by about 10 minutes of some sort of reading for self development or spirituality, and some journaling and reflection time. Um, and then that usually is followed by engaging with my family and kind of getting back into my day, what I need to get accomplished. So I have a vision board in my planner, and I just look at that as I transition into what I need to get done that day. Evening routine is a little bit different depending on the day, but I usually like try to do something to wind myself down, whether that be a bath or a shower, using something warm, like even sometimes just my bathrobe and a cup of tea, but something to wind down. I like to read in bed, although my Whoop tells me that's not great for my REM sleep, but I love it. So I like to read in bed. So I usually am reading some sort of a fictional novel or something fun right before bed. And then, yeah, then going to bed.
So I know you just talked about reading, but how often do you read? And can you recommend a book and share why?
So I read pretty much every day. I typically, and people laugh at this, but I typically read multiple books at a time.
Me
Um,
too.
I love it. And usually I do have some purpose to my reading. So I do, like I said, in the morning, I often have like a self growth or some sort of spiritual development type of a reading that I'm doing. And during the day, if I'm reading, it's often research articles or I'm often having some sort of a project going on where it's either developing a program or a research article. So I'm doing some sort of kind of academic type reading. And then, like right now, I'm reading a book on EMDR for an article I'm writing. So something like that. At night, it's a fictional book or some sort of novel, something fun. And right now, I'm also so I'm a part of a small book club, and we typically pick more spiritual and self-growth type books to process. And that would be the one that I'd recommend right now. And it's The Practice of Wholeness, Spiritual Transformation in Everyday Life by Lorena Manda. And it's great. It's got a very practical guide. She's a doctor of Oriental medicine as well as a psychotherapist. And she really uses both of those to break things into a number of stages and looking at the body versus emotion versus kind of our thinking brain. and then giving lots of exercises to do for that. So my book club is currently doing that. And so I've read that book, and now I'm going back through it as a way to report on it for our meeting. So that's the one I would say has been the most that I'm doing right now.
Awesome. I will add that to the show notes. Let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
So when I was thinking about how do you tell people how to do this? And sometimes that's really confusing because, again, it comes back to you just have to do it. And then when you fail, you build confidence, you keep what works. Actually, I think I heard this little ditty on your podcast from an earlier guest was, fail, because then you can keep what's working and get rid of what's not working, but, keep what's working. That you don't want to be just trying to make everything perfect, because there's nothing behind that then. There's no time in, there's no work. And so when I think about building confidence, like that's the biggest thing you have to do. And then I had some great advice from a former boss of mine, which was always push the envelope. Like, where are you? Where do you want to go? And you might say, well, we can't really get there. Well, yeah, you can. Just push the envelope. You might not be able to get all the way there in one shot, but what's the next limit to what you need to push open? And so she taught me how to do that. And then because I can be a pretty intense person, she also taught me how to do that with paying attention to my intensity. So some people will not be able to respond if I'm coming across too intensely. So she helped me learn how to modulate that intensity so that I'm effective. And so I would say that the two things that really get things done are always push the envelope. Don't be afraid to fail, because that will build your confidence. And make sure that you're really paying attention to and working on this idea of modulating yourself, because it's a both and. There's always paradoxes. There's always two sides to everything. There's a push and a pull. There's a give and a take. There's good and a bad. And so being able to really allow yourself to sit in the middle of those without it needing to be anything other than it is in that moment will allow you to see what the edge of that envelope is you need to push.
Okay, O2Bers, you heard it. Always push the envelope. I love that. Stacy, how can we connect with you?
So you can connect with me through I have a couple of websites. My blog is at stacyRD.com, so STACYRD.com. And then my psychology practice website is at stacyruelle.com, which is STACYREUILLE.com. And so through either one of those websites, I also have a bunch of social media. You can find all of the links to my Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all that stuff on those websites as well. So through those is another way. Although I'm not awesome at social media, I have to tell you that. Sometimes I have to get my children to help me.
But you're doing it anyway.
But I'm doing it anyway. And I'm not very good at always going back in and checking. So please be patient with me. And but through any of those forums is always a way to get in touch with me if you're not in my local community.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Stacy. You've been a total badass, and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Thank you so much, Marie.
With that, we'll end our show. To all the badass women out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass, and get the chance to be on a future Spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.